Hey everyone, welcome to a deep dive for all you UPSC aspirants, especially those of you, gearing up for the international relations optional paper.
Oh, that's a great group to be talking to.
Yeah,
Big thinkers.
absolutely. And we're diving into some seriously big thinking today
That's right.
with someone whose ideas are as relevant now as they were decades ago, John Rawls.
Rawls, a giant in the field.
Yeah.
And his work, A Theory of Justice, I mean,
Right.
it's practically required reading
Oh, yeah.
for anyone who's serious about understanding political philosophy and how it, plays out in international relations.
So we're zeroing in on one of his most powerful ideas.
Mm.
Some might even say radical, and that's the difference principle.
It's definitely a head-turner.
Yeah.
It really challenges how we think about fairness and equality.
Okay, so what's the difference principle in a nutshell?
Well, the difference principle says that inequalities, they're allowed,
Okay.
but only if they benefit the least well-off in society.
So it's not about everyone having the exact same amount.
Yeah. No, it's not about strict equality.
But more about structuring things so that even those at the bottom are still benefiting.
That's it.
Gotcha.
It's about making sure that everyone, regardless of their starting point, has a real shot at a decent life.
I love how Rawls puts it. He says, the naturally advantaged are not to gain merely because they are more gifted, but only to cover the costs of training and education, and for using their endowments in ways that help the less fortunate as well.
That's such a powerful statement.
Yeah, it's like saying, hey, if you were born on third base, congrats. But you don't get to just sit there and enjoy the view. You got to use that advantage to help those who are still struggling to get on the field.
Perfect analogy.
Right.
And this principle, it has huge EE implications
Oh, yeah.
for how we think about everything from social welfare to economic inequality to global justice.
It really makes you question everything.
It does.
Like those assumptions we often take for granted
Absolutely.
about fairness.
And that's Rawls' genius. He makes us confront these hard questions about creating a truly just society.
Now, Rawls didn't come up with these ideas in a vacuum.
Of course not.
He was grappling with a whole bunch of other thinkers and responding to different schools of thought.
Exactly. He was part of a larger conversation.
So how does his difference principle stack up against other big theories of justice out there? It's one thing to have a radical idea, but defending it, that's a whole other ballgame.
It is, and that's where things get interesting.
Yeah.
Because you have folks like Robert Nozick, Friedrich Hayek, even Ronald Dworkin, all with their own takes on justice.
Okay, so let's break it down a little. Nozick, with his libertarian leanings, I'm guessing he wouldn't be too thrilled about redistributing wealth, even if it's to help those who are struggling.
You're right on the money there.
Yeah.
Nozick, he's all about individual liberty and property rights.
Okay.
He'd probably see the difference principle as a big no-no, like the government overstepping its bounds.
And what about Hayek? Mr. Free Markets himself. I doubt he'd be a fan of government intervention to, even things out.
You're catching on quickly.
Uh,
Hayek firmly believed that free markets are the most efficient and just way to allocate resources.
okay.
He'd argue that the difference principle would mess things up, leading to less prosperity for everyone.
So even within the realm of, liberal thought,
Yeah.
there was pushback against Rawls' approach.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not just a simple left versus right kind of thing,
Exactly. And these nuances,
Yeah.
they're important to grasp.
especially for the UPSC.
Because you'll be expected to show a deep understanding of all these different views and how they connect to real-world issues.
Makes sense. So even someone like Dworkin, who, he shared some common ground with Rawls, but when it came to equality, he still had his own distinct ideas about how to make a just society,
That's right.
more focused on individual responsibility,
Yes, and on inequalities that stem from choices people make.
rather than circumstances they can't control.
Ex-
Gotcha.
A subtle but important difference.
So we've got Nozick on one side, Hayek kind of in the middle there, and then Dworkin.
Yeah, think of it as a spectrum.
But Rawls got hit with criticism from both ends of the political spectrum.
Oh, for sure.
He wasn't immune to that.
Not at all.
From the left, you had folks like C.B. McPherson, who basically said Rawls didn't go far enough.
McPherson felt that Rawls was still playing by the rules of a system that inherently favored those in power.
Yeah, he was like, nice try, Rawls, but you're still working within a framework that's rigged from the start.
Exactly.
Harsh.
Well, it was a pointed critique.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, you had the neoconservatives who saw Rawls' focus on equality as a slippery slope.
To a loss of individual liberty.
Exactly. They feared that too much emphasis on redistribution would stifle innovation and lead to stagnation.
So it seems like Rawls was trying to find that sweet spot.
He was walking a tightrope.
Between addressing inequality and not totally upending the whole system?
And his response to these criticisms, it's brilliant.
Really?
He tackles them head on
Uh,
with this incredible rigor and nuance.
okay, color me intrigued. How does he defend himself?
Well, one of the key ways he does it is by introducing this concept of primary social goods.
Primary social goods.
These are the things that Rawls believes everyone needs for a good life. Regardless of their individual goals or aspirations, think of them as the building blocks for a good life.
Got it.
Things like basic rights and liberties.
Freedom of speech, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Opportunities for education and employment, access to health care, and something super important,
Okay, what's that?
self-respect.
Ah, self-respect.
Rawls sees it as absolutely essential
Yeah.
for a just society.
It's not just about the material stuff.
Right.
It's about feeling valued, capable in society.
It's about knowing your worth,
Right.
believing in yourself, and your ability to contribute to the world.
Totally. Hard to imagine someone truly thriving if they constantly feel looked down on.
It's exactly.
Or like they're not good enough.
Rawls argues that self-respect is not a luxury.
Yeah.
It's necessity.
And when you combine this idea of self-respect with the difference principle,
It gets really interesting
it does.
because it suggests that inequalities can be especially damaging
How so?
if they chip away at the self-respect of the least advantaged.
So it's not just about, having enough money or resources, but about creating a society where everyone feels like they matter.
That's the heart of it.
This is fascinating stuff, and it makes me think about Rawls' impact on political theory as a whole.
He's a game changer.
Yeah.
His ideas have shaped not just academic debates,
Right, it's not just ivory tower stuff.
but also real-world discussions on everything from social programs to global development initiatives.
Wow.
Think climate change,
Okay.
global inequality, the refugee crisis.
These huge global issues.
His influence is everywhere.
I'm starting to see how his ideas have really seeped into so many aspects of our world.
Like the UN Sustainable Development Goals, for example.
Perfect example.
Yeah.
The SDGs. With their focus on eradicating poverty, improving health and education, promoting sustainability.
They align really well with Rawls' vision of a more just and equitable world.
They do.
It's like a real-world application of his principles.
And for you UPSC folks, being
Right.
able to analyze those SDGs through a Rawlsian lens, that's gold.
I see that.
You could even bring in those criticisms of Rawls we talked about earlier.
Oh, yeah, like McPherson saying Rawls doesn't go far enough
Exactly.
because he's still working within the confines of capitalism
Showing that you understand those critiques and can apply them,
to like real-world scenarios.
that demonstrates real depth.
The examiners will love that.
They will.
So for all our listeners out there prepping for the UPSC, diving into Rawls isn't just about acing the exam.
It's bigger than that.
It is.
It's about equipping yourself with the tools to really understand and address.
Those pressing global challenges.
It's about becoming a more informed and engaged global citizen.
That's a powerful way to put it.
Now let's dig into one of Rawls' more subtle but important distinctions.
Okay, I'm ready.
The idea of two different conceptions of justice.
Two conceptions of justice.
He talks about a general conception
Okay,
and a special conception.
all right. This sounds a little tricky,
It's not too bad.
but what's the difference?
Think of the general conception as the big umbrella,
Okay,
the overarching principle that applies to everyone.
got it.
It allows for inequalities.
Right, as long as they benefit the least well-off.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's the general idea.
Now, the special conception is where things get more specific.
Okay,
This is embodied in his famous two principles of justice.
which include the difference principle.
You got it.
Aha. So the special conception is more about the nuts and bolts.
Exactly. It's about how that big idea
The general concept.
gets translated into the actual rules and institutions of society.
It's like having a blueprint and then figuring out the detailed construction plans
Perfect analogy.
to make it all work.
And to understand how these conceptions play out,
Yeah,
we need to circle back to those primary social goods.
things like basic rights, opportunities, healthcare, and self-respect.
All those good things.
Right.
Rawls argues that the way these goods are distributed
Yeah.
should be guided by the difference principle.
So we should set things up so that any inequalities in those areas ultimately benefit those who are most disadvantaged,
It's not just about giving everyone an equal starting point.
but about making sure that any inequalities that do pop up are actually helping to lift up those at the bottom.
You've got it.
But isn't there a risk that if we're always focused on the least advantaged,
Yeah.
people might lose motivation.
That's a good point.
Why work hard if someone else is always going to benefit from your efforts?
Rawls anticipated that concern.
He did.
He argued that wanting things like income and wealth,
Okay.
it's not inherently selfish.
Right. I mean, those things can help you pursue your goals,
Exactly.
whether they're personal or aimed at helping others.
He's not saying everyone needs to be rich,
Yeah.
but that everyone should have enough.
Enough to live a decent life.
Exactly.
Participate in society.
It's not about squashing ambition.
Okay.
It's about channeling it.
So everyone benefits.
That makes a lot of sense theoretically,
It does.
but practically speaking,
Yeah. How do we actually implement this?
that's the million-dollar question.
Right. Especially on a global scale.
It's a massive undertaking.
It would take a lot of political will
For sure.
and cooperation.
Absolutely.
Rawls gives us the framework,
He lays the groundwork.
but the actual implementation.
That's where the real challenge lies.
And that's what the UPSC exam is all about, right?
It's about grappling with those complexities.
Not just finding easy answers.
Exactly.
So we've talked about how Rawls views individuals and their place in society.
Mm-hmm.
But he also emphasizes the importance of individual autonomy.
That's crucial.
Yeah. Our capacity for moral reasoning.
So it's not just about having stuff,
No.
but about having the freedom to decide what that stuff means to you.
And how you want to use it to shape your life.
This freedom to choose.
That's what Rawls calls moral personality.
Moral personality.
Is what separates us from mere objects.
And this idea of moral personality, it's woven into his whole concept of justice.
It is.
Right?
It means that justice can't be about forcing everyone to conform.
To like one specific idea of the good life.
Exactly. It has to respect individual autonomy.
People have different values, different beliefs.
And that's okay.
It's about creating a system that allows for that diversity.
And that's why Rawls puts so much weight on basic liberties.
Like freedom of speech.
Yes, freedom of association, freedom of conscience.
These aren't just abstract rights.
They're essential
They are.
for individuals to develop their own moral personality.
And to participate in a meaningful way in decision-making.
So it's not just about protecting individual rights for the sake of it, but because those rights are crucial for a just and democratic society.
Precisely.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And it leads us to another important aspect of Rawls' later work.
Oh, which one?
His focus on political legitimacy
Oh, yeah.
in a pluralistic society.
That's a big one.
It is. So how does he approach this?
He acknowledges that in a diverse world, you can't expect everyone to agree on everything.
People come from different backgrounds.
Different beliefs, different values.
It's the reality of our world.
So Rawls argues that a just and stable society needs a way to deal with this diversity
Okay.
without resorting to force or suppression.
So how do we do that?
He proposes this idea of an overlapping consensus.
Overlapping consensus. What's that?
It's about finding common ground.
Even if people have different reasons for being there.
Exactly. It's a shared agreement.
On like basic principles of justice.
Even if people arrive at that agreement from different starting points.
So we might disagree on the details,
Uh-huh.
but we can still agree on the fundamental principles.
It's about finding a way to coexist peacefully.
Work together.
Even when we don't see eye to eye on everything.
That sounds incredibly challenging in today's world,
It is a tall order.
with all the polarization and division.
But Rawls believed it's not only possible
But essential.
for a just and stable society.
So how does this idea of an overlapping consensus apply to international relations?
It suggests that global cooperation and international agreements should be built on shared principles.
That respect the diversity of cultures and values around the world,
Exactly.
so we can work together on issues like climate change,
Or global poverty.
even if countries have different political or economic systems,
It's about bridging those differences.
to create a more just and peaceful world.
That's the goal.
That's a vision worth striving for.
It is.
Now, as we wrap up our deep dive into Rawls and the difference principle,
Let's go back to that thought-provoking question.
the one about designing a society based on Rawls' ideas.
How would you actually do it?
Yeah, how do we translate these abstract principles into concrete policies?
It's a tough question.
But it's the kind of question that UPSC aspirants should be ready to tackle.
Think about the implications for domestic policy.
Okay.
International development, global institutions.
There's no easy answer.
And that's what makes it so interesting to think about.
It's the kind of thinking Rawls would wanted us to do.
He was all about making philosophy practical.
Yeah, he wanted his ideas to have a real impact on the world.
And that's why he's so important for you UPSC folks.
Especially those of you focusing on IR.
Because understanding Rawls, it's not just about memorizing facts for the exam.
It's about developing this framework.
Yeah, a way of thinking critically about global issues.
About crafting solutions.
His work gives you the tools to analyze those complex challenges.
To really evaluate those different approaches to global cooperation.
To articulate strong arguments.
Not just in your exams.
But in your future careers.
Like having a superpower.
A mental model.
To help you make sense of this crazy world.
So let's recap.
Okay, what were those big takeaways?
We started by breaking down that radical idea of the difference principle.
Inequalities are only okay if they benefit the least well-off.
It really flips the script on how we traditionally think about meritocracy.
And makes us consider the role of luck and circumstance.
We dug into the concept of primary social goods.
Those essential things everyone needs.
To live a good life.
We talked about the crucial role of self-respect.
Feeling valued, capable, empowered.
And we looked at how these ideas play out in real-world situations.
Like the SDG.
Using those as a case study.
And we didn't shy away from those criticisms of Rawls.
Because wrestling with those different perspectives...
It strengthens our understanding.
Especially for something like the UPSC.
Where they want to see that you can think for yourselves.
Analyze those different viewpoints.
Apply these ideas to real-world problems.
So as you keep going on your UPSC journey...
Keep Rawls in mind.
He's not just a name on a reading list.
He's a guide.
A mentor.
Someone who can help you navigate the world of international relations.
Become a more informed global citizen.
And if you're really interested in how his ideas apply to global issues...
Yeah, where should we go next?
Check out The Law of Peoples, his later work.
What's that about?
It explores how these principles of justice can work on the international stage.
Perfect for anyone dreaming of a career in diplomacy or international relations.
One must read.
Now, before we sign off.
One last thought to ponder.
All right, hit us with it.
We've discussed Rawls' ideas.
The criticism.
The applications.
But what about your own perspective?
If you were building a society based on the difference principle...
Whoa, big question.
What policies would you put in place?
How would you make sure those inequalities...
Which are bound to happen.
...actually benefit those at the bottom?
Think about it.
What would it mean for your country?
For the world.
No easy answer.
But that's what makes it worth thinking about.
That's what the UPSC is all about.
Showing that you can engage with these complex ideas.
Think critically.
And come up with your own vision for a more just world.
So keep those brains working.
Don't forget to hit that like button.
And subscribe to our channel.
For more deep dives.
Tailored just for you UPSC aspirants.
We'll be back soon with more thought-provoking discussions.
Until then, keep learning.
Keep questioning.
And keep striving for a better world.